My mother once told me she regretted not abandoning me at the hospital. 6 years later, I ensured she abandoned the only home she'd ever known. The smell of old coffee grounds and rotting vegetables will forever be tied to the worst moment of my life. It's funny how the brain makes those connections. For me, that specific sour scent is the smell of being worthless. It's the smell of my mother's love, or rather, the gaping, empty void where it was supposed to be. It all started on Mother's Day. I'd spent months planning my gift. My brother, Liam, the golden child, would just throw money at the problem. Last year, it was a designer handbag she used once. This year, he'd probably get her a weekend at a spa. Me? I don't have that kind of money, but I have time, and I have a skill. I restore old jewelry. My grandmother, my mom's mom, had left behind a beautiful silver locket. It was tarnished, and the hinge was broken, but I knew it had been her most prized possession. Mom had tossed it in a dusty box in the attic years ago, muttering that it was old junk. So for 3 months I worked on it in secret. I painstakingly polished the silver until it shone like a new moon. I sourced a vintage correct clasp and repaired the delicate hinge. I even found a tiny perfect photo of my grandmother as a young woman and a matching one of my mom as a baby and carefully placed them inside. It was more than a gift. It was a piece of our history, a bridge to the mother she lost so young. I wrapped it in a velvet box, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. This time, I thought, this time, she'll see me. On Mother's Day morning, I came downstairs to find Liam had already presented his gift, an all-expenses-paid trip to Paris. For one. "You just need to get away from it all, Mom," he said, beaming as she sobbed with theatrical joy. My dad clapped him on the back, looking proud. I stood there, my small velvet box feeling suddenly heavy and stupid in my hands. "I have something for you too, Mom," I said, my voice barely a whisper. She turned to me, wiping away a crocodile tear. "Oh, honey, you didn't have to." The tone was already dismissive. I held out the box. She opened it, and her face went blank. She picked up the locket, dangling it from her fingers as if it were a dead insect. "It was Grandma's," I explained, my voice trembling slightly. "I restored it for you. I thought—" "You thought what?" she cut in, her voice cold. "That I wanted to be reminded of more dead people? The hinge is still crooked." It wasn't. It was perfect. I'd spent a week on that hinge alone. "It's beautiful, Carol," my dad said weakly, ever the peacemaker who never actually made peace. Mom ignored him. She dropped the locket back into the box and pushed it across the table towards me. "Thank you, I suppose, but I have nowhere to wear such a thing." Her eyes met mine, and there was no warmth, no kindness, just a chilling emptiness. "Honestly," she sighed, turning back to admire the Paris brochure, "some days I really wish I'd just left you at the hospital. My life would have been so much simpler." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Liam snorted a laugh, and my dad just stared down at his coffee cup. I mumbled an excuse about not feeling well and ran up to my room, the velvet box clutched in my hand. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Later that night, consumed by a strange mix of grief and defiance, I decided I would keep the locket for myself. It was a piece of my grandmother, after all. But when I went to my mom's room, the little velvet box was gone from her nightstand. I looked everywhere. Finally, with a dawning, sickening sense of dread, I went to the kitchen. The trash had just been taken out. I raced outside to the bin by the curb, my heart pounding in my ears. I lifted the lid, and there it was, lying on top of a pile of eggshells and coffee grounds glinting under the security light, was the silver locket. She hadn't even bothered to keep the box. She'd just thrown it in the bin like a piece of garbage. That was the moment something inside me broke. The part that had spent 24 years trying to earn her love finally shattered into a million pieces. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring at the discarded piece of my heart, and felt nothing. A deep, cold, and blessedly quiet nothing. The next 3 months were a blur of numb silence. I moved through my life like a ghost. I ate with my family, but I didn't speak. I answered their questions in monosyllables. They seemed to enjoy the quiet. My mom was happier than I'd ever seen her, planning her trip to Paris. My dad was relieved not to have to play referee. It was as if I had finally faded into the background, just like they always wanted. Then, one Saturday, my dad asked me to help him clear out some old files from his home office. He was digitizing everything, box after box of old receipts, tax returns, and forgotten paperwork. I was working through a dusty file cabinet when my hand brushed against a thick, sealed manila envelope tucked away at the very back of a drawer. It wasn't a company envelope, it had the name of a law firm on it. My grandmother's name was typed just below it. Curiosity got the better of me. My dad was in the other room, so I carefully slid it open. Inside was a dense legal document. It was my grandmother's last will and testament. I started scanning through the pages, mostly legal jargon about her house and savings. But then my eyes landed on a specific section titled, Provisions for My Grandchildren. My breath caught in my throat. It mentioned Liam first, a small educational bond. Then it mentioned me. It specifically described the silver locket, stating it was to be given to me on my 18th birthday, as it was the key to something much more important. My eyes scanned the page, my heart hammering against my ribs, desperate to understand what that meant. And that's when I saw it, a paragraph that made the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just about the locket. It was about what the locket symbolized. My mother hadn't just thrown away a piece of jewelry. She had been actively hiding my entire inheritance from me for the last 6 years. The world didn't explode. The house didn't shake. I just stood there in the dusty silence of my father's office, holding a piece of paper that rewrote my entire life. The numbness I'd been wrapped in for 3 months didn't vanish. It sharpened. It cooled and hardened into something that felt like steel in my veins. My mother hadn't just discarded a gift. She hadn't just insulted my efforts. She had systematically, for 6 years since I turned 18, stolen my future. I folded the will, slipped it back into the manila envelope, and hid it in my own room. My hands were perfectly steady. My mind was crystal clear. The first thing I did was retrieve the locket. After my family had gone to bed that awful Mother's Day night, I had crept back out to the bin. I'd plunged my hand into the grime and garbage without hesitation and pulled it out. I had washed it, dried it, and hidden it away. Now I took it out and examined it under my desk lamp. The will said it was a key. I pressed and prodded every surface, every swirling engraving, and then I found it. A tiny, almost invisible seam along the back. Using the tip of a sewing needle, I pried it open. The back plate popped off, revealing a shallow, hidden compartment. And nestled inside was a small, ornate, strangely shaped brass key. It wasn't a house key. It looked like a key for a safe deposit box. The next morning, while my mother was on the phone, loudly describing the Michelin star restaurants she planned to visit in Paris, I took pictures of every page of my grandmother's will. Then I looked up the law firm on the envelope. They were still in business. I made an appointment for the following day, telling my family I had a dentist checkup. Walking into that lawyer's office was like stepping into another reality. I sat across from a kind, elderly man named Mr. Harrison, the junior partner who had taken over my grandmother's file when his father retired. I explained everything, my voice low and even, showing him the pictures of the will and the locket with its hidden key. He listened patiently, his expression growing more grave with every word. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Your grandmother was a very sharp woman," he said. "She loved you dearly, but she did not trust your mother, not one bit." He pulled out a thick, dusty file. It was all there. My grandmother hadn't just left me the locket. She had left me her house, the very house we were all living in, and a substantial trust fund meant to pay for its upkeep and my education. The deed and the account access were to be transferred to me on my 18th birthday, with my mother acting as executor. but the final crucial documents were locked in a safe deposit box, the box that the key in the locket opened. My mother was supposed to give me the locket, tell me everything, and sign the final papers with the lawyer. Instead, she had buried the will, hidden the locket, and had been illegally managing and, Mr. Harrison suspected, spending my trust fund for 6 years, all while living in my house, rent-free. "She's broken the law, my dear," he said gently. "Multiple fiduciary duties. We can take her to court. It will be a long and messy process." I shook my head. "No," I said, the steel in my veins singing. "I don't want a long process. I want it to be quick." I looked him right in the eye. "She's leaving for Paris in 2 weeks. I want it all to happen before she leaves. I want everything that is mine." For the next 10 days, I was a silent whirlwind of activity. I met with Mr. Harrison twice more. We visited the bank where, armed with the will and the key, I was granted access to the safe deposit box. Inside were the original deed to the house, now solely in my name, and account statements for the trust fund. My mother had been systematically siphoning money from it for years, funding her and my brother's lavish lifestyles. Paris was being paid for with my money. The rage I felt was so cold it was almost peaceful. It gave me a purpose. I legally transferred all the funds to a new account in my name only. I had Mr. Harrison draw up official paperwork. I planned everything down to the minute. All the while, at home, I was a ghost. I floated through dinners, ignoring my mother's giddy chatter about what she'd wear to the Louvre and my brother's bragging about his latest promotion. They didn't notice a thing. Why would they? I was just the quiet, disappointing daughter. I was wallpaper. The morning of the Paris trip finally arrived. My mother was practically vibrating with excitement, flitting around the entryway where her brand new luggage was waiting. Liam was there to take her to the airport, and my dad was fussing over her passport. She was wearing a new outfit, her face beaming. "Well, don't I look like a woman who's about to have the time of her life?" she trilled, striking a pose. I walked down the stairs slowly, one step at a time. I wasn't wearing my usual worn-out jeans. I was in a crisp blouse and slacks, the clothes I'd worn to the lawyer's office. I was holding a thick envelope. They all stopped and stared at me, surprised to see me looking so present. "Oh, look who decided to join us," my mom said with a patronizing little laugh. "Come to see your glamorous mother off?" "Something like that," I said, my voice calm and clear. I walked right up to her and held out the envelope. "I believe this is for you." Confused, she took it. "What is this? A going-away card?" She tore it open, her smile faltering as she pulled out the sheaf of legal documents inside. She scanned the first page, her brow furrowed, then her eyes widened. The color drained from her face, leaving her perfectly applied makeup looking like a grotesque mask. What is this?" she whispered, her voice cracking. I looked her dead in the eye, and for the first time in my life, I smiled. A real, genuine smile. "That," I said, my voice ringing with a clarity that silenced the entire house, "is a formal eviction notice. I'm giving you 30 days to vacate my property." The silence that fell over the entryway was absolute, broken only by the soft rustle of the papers trembling in my mother's hand. Her face, a moment ago so full of smug excitement, had crumpled into a mask of disbelief and fury. My father's jaw was slack, his eyes darting between me and the documents. Liam, ever the golden child, just looked confused. Your property," my mother finally choked out, her voice a strangled whisper. "You're insane. This is my house. My mother left it to me." "No," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the steel that had replaced my spine. "Grandma left it to me, along with the trust fund you've been using as your personal piggy bank for the last 6 years. It's all there, Mom. The will, the bank statements, the deed with my name on it. Mr. Harrison sends his regards." The mention of her mother's lawyer seemed to land like a punch. The fight went out of her, replaced by a wave of pure theatrical panic. "Frank," she shrieked at my father. "Are you going to let her do this? Talk to your daughter." My dad just stared at me, looking utterly lost. "Honey, is this true?" "Every word," I replied, not taking my eyes off my mother. "I've been living in a house I owned for 6 years while you let her treat me like garbage and steal my inheritance. You didn't see a thing, did you?" He flinched, and I felt a small, bitter pang of victory. He had been complicit in his silence, and now he had to face it. "This is ridiculous," Liam finally piped up, stepping forward. "You can't just kick Mom out. Where is she supposed to go?" "I don't know, Liam," I said, turning my cold gaze on him. "Maybe she can stay with you? Though you might have to sell your new sports car. Turns out my trust fund paid for the down payment on that, too. I've already spoken to my lawyer about asset recovery." Liam's face went pale. He took a step back as if I'd physically struck him. For the first time, he was seeing me not as his doormat little sister, but as a threat. My mother started to sob then, big, gulping, performative sobs. "After everything I've done for you, I raised you. This is how you repay me? You're a monster, an ungrateful, cruel little monster." "You threw my heart in the trash, Mom," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You literally threw a piece of your own mother, my grandmother, into the garbage because you couldn't be bothered. You told me you regretted not abandoning me at birth. Don't you dare talk to me about gratitude. This isn't cruelty. This is a consequence." Her flight to Paris was, of course, canceled. The next 30 days were a masterclass in manipulation and emotional blackmail. My mother alternated between wailing hysterically, trying to guilt-trip me with stories of my difficult childhood, and screaming at me that I was ruining her life. My father tried to mediate, which mostly involved him begging me to be the bigger person and let them stay. Liam wouldn't even look at me. I didn't budge. I had Mr. Harrison on speed dial, and every time they tried to cross a line, I had a legal reminder sent over. I changed the Wi-Fi password. I started cooking my own meals and eating in my room. I was a stranger in my own home, but it was a home I was finally claiming. The power dynamic had shifted so completely, it was like the gravity in the house had reversed. They were no longer floating above me. They were crashing down to earth. On the final day, a moving truck pulled up. My mother directed the movers with a martyred air, glaring at me as I stood in the doorway, my arms crossed. She had to sell her designer handbags and some of her own jewelry to afford the deposit on a small apartment across town. My father, looking 10 years older, packed his things in silence. He was going with her. He made his choice. And it wasn't me. It stung, but I expected it. Liam helped them, his resentment a toxic cloud around him. Before he left, he stopped in front of me. "I hope you're happy," he spat, "all alone in this big, empty house." "I've been alone in this house my whole life, Liam," I told him. "The only difference is now it's quiet." He had no response to that. He just turned and walked away. After the truck pulled away and the front door closed, I was left standing in the echoing silence of the entryway. For a moment, a wave of panic washed over me. Liam's words echoed in my ears. I was truly, completely alone. But then, another feeling rose to replace it. A feeling of lightness, of peace. I walked through the house, my house, touching the walls. I opened the windows, letting the fresh air chase out the stale scent of resentment and old coffee grounds. I went up to the attic and found the box of my grandmother's things my mother had called old junk. I spent the rest of the day carefully unpacking it, discovering faded photographs, beautiful old books, and a handful of letters she had written to me before I was even born, filled with love and hopes for my future. That evening, I sat on my porch, wearing the silver locket. It felt cool and solid against my skin. The house wasn't empty. It was filled with the spirit of the woman who had loved me enough to protect me, even after she was gone. My life wasn't over, it was just beginning. I had my home, I had my future, and for the first time, I had myself. And as the sun set, casting a warm golden glow over everything, I knew with absolute certainty that I was going to be okay.